Okay. Elohim Nisa et Abraham. And God gave Abraham a test. Tonight, I'm going to give you a test because I'm going to put in doubt the usual interpretation of the story. Which means that you're going to hear a different viewpoint, and now you're going to have two choices. Either you're going to accept one or accept the other. We talked about that before in different contexts, but by putting you in a doubt, that's the test. Now, so the first point here is Nisa. It means wavering. It means putting Abraham, when we say test, we usually look at it from the point of view of the teacher, from the point of view of Hashem. Hashem is giving a test. You know, a short answer. You have to answer yes or no. Do this or do that. Okay. But Nisa has another dimension to it. It means, just like I said, putting the person in doubt, wavering, not knowing which way to go, coming to a fork in the road, and it branches off into two directions, and the person who's doing the walking has to decide which way to go. Okay? So that's the first point. The first point is that Nisa, you have to look at it in this broader sense and not in a very narrow sense, like taking a test in a college classroom or whatever. So it has to do with this wavering. Okay, second point, V'ha Elohim Nisa et Abraham. It doesn't say Elohim, it says V'ha Elohim.
Oh my God.
Now in the translations, here, there's a translation, God. Elohim is God. But what happened to the hay?
Yeah, right.
In 55, 60 places in the Chumash, it says Ha Elohim. Now that usually is the case. It means the hey hayediyah. If you say ha adam, you're talking about the man or the person or whatever. So the question that we have, and we'll come back to it at the end, is why does it say ha Elohim and not Elohim? The translation again bypasses it, I think, because nobody had really a good shot at what it really means. Okay, but in 55 places it says Elohim, and since I had to do all this differentiation between when it says Elohim, when it says Hashem, all of a sudden hit me, what am I going to say about it? And this was the point. Okay, so we will come back to that. Now, the basis of this talk, as for the rest of the Chumash, is also a point that most of the people do not take. The point is that there's a double name. There's a double name for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In the Torah system, as evidence in the Gan Eden story, there's a double name. In other words, like my name is Joseph David, okay? If Joseph represented one side of me and David represented another side, if you call me Joseph, I don't answer, it's not me. If you call me David, that's not me. You have to call me by both my names to catch the fullness of the person. Okay, now, the basic reason why that is a chiddush, nobody takes the view, very few, if any, is because Elohim is in a plural. So because it's grammatically a plural, people have said, oh well, like all the rest of the cultures, there's a general term for God, and then there's his name. Each culture had a God who ran the universe or whatever the properties were, but it had a name. So it was Baal, this, that, whatever the name was the personal name. So the personal name takes a singular. Elohim, well, if it's a plural, it should take a plural form, but it doesn't, it takes a singular. In the text, in the Breshit story, it says, Breshit bara Elohim. It takes a singular. So, this is not for tonight. The point is, for whatever the reasons, the personal name, the two-part name, Hashem, Elohim, one of them is a plural form and the other one is a singular form, but conceptually they are parts of one totality. And we can explain some other time why it says the plural form, okay? But it says the plural form, but grammatically it takes the singular, which means that we got a problem here. Eventually to come. I'll come back to it at the end. Okay. Okay, so we're going to have to use Elohim and Hashem. Elohim says to Avraham that he doesn't use tzivui language, he should sacrifice his son. Okay? So the first thing is, when he starts to get ready to go, see, sacrifice your son, your dear one, your loved ones. The first time it says Ahava in the Chumash, okay, et Yitzchak, and go to the land of Moriah, and somebody will show him what to do, and so on and so on. Okay, Vayashem Avraham baboker, v'chavesh et chamaro, and he prepares everything to start going. So the question is, first, when you read the Chumash, if you stick to the meaning of the word without filling it out, you don't quite catch the story. Because it says, Vayomer, and he said. Well, there's at least 100. We can go around the table and say 100 different he said. He said in a robot-like fashion. He moved fast. He woke up fast and got ready to do this thing that Hashem told him. How do we know what his mentality was? Was he like wavering, that he didn't know whether he should or shouldn't? Was he firmly convinced? Was he running to do the job to satisfy HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him to do this? Or was he running and being excited to do it to get it over with?
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes we run fast and we try to do things and say, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do this today. I don't want to do X, Y, and Z. So I said, well, I don't want to do it. But if I do things fast, I'll finish it in an hour instead of 5. So I won't waste the whole day. So again, when we look at the text, we have to realize that in order to understand the story, we eventually have to come to some kind of a conclusion which limits and brings down to a reality. How is he going? How is he moving? So when it gives you over here 5, 6 verbs in a row, he did this, he did this, he did this, we could take that in different ways. And the task of the reader is to propose and imagine different, from your own experience, imagine different characteristics of response, and eventually bring them down to a few, hopefully to 1. If you can't bring it to 1, fine, it could be 3, 4, but not 25, not 105. I mean, because walk. I mean, he had a fight with his wife the night before. When he gets up in the morning, he's not the same person. I mean, the different aspects are built in. Okay, so one of our tasks is how we are to interpret these terms so that we get the story. Now, the tradition took it that Avram listened to Elohim and he saw his intention. His intention was seen. We'll get to it right away. And he stopped, didn't sacrifice him because it was a test. So on the basis of that, everybody interpreted these words to be Avram was really hurrying to do the fantastically good thing of sacrificing Yitzchak. So that the meanings of these words, that he got ready, he got up in the morning, put on pajamas, blah, 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 okay, that comes from the rest of the story. When you figure out the rest of the story, and that's what the thing was, therefore, there's a virtue in when Hashem calls upon you to do something, there's a virtue to do it as soon as possible, leave other things, and fulfill the command or the Eitzah. So, again, here we see the problem. If we give, as tonight, we're going to give a different understanding, then when we start to put together the feeling dimension of the story, it will turn out he didn't run to do the thing because he thought it was good. He ran to do it in a very mechanical, robot-like fashion where the wavering in him was still operative. In one context, wavering, Nisan means going around in a circle. So he was like, in his mind, going here, going there, like when you have a problem and you've got to make a decision on something, it goes around in a circle. Your stream of consciousness goes this way, and you follow out a few consequences, and then I feel it doesn't feel right. And then you switch and you get another dimension. So this is human, all too human, in terms of the description. But this is important from the point of view of methodology in general, because what I did in the Perush was to take each story and do this kind of a thing. And there's so much to be done by others. I mean, I only gave the form and a number of examples in the text, but each narrative gives you a fantastic amount of work that you, over time, doesn't have to be done immediately. Over time, especially when we reread the stories, you have to get closure, relative closure, let's call it. How you can get one shot, that remains open. But at least relative closure, to choose from 3 or 4 different meanings, is one thing. To be in a context of choosing from 100 leaves you in a kind of a confusion with all the doubts. Okay. So, look at the situation. He's called upon to sacrifice his son. Okay? Wow. That's a traumatic situation. I mean, that's not just words. I mean, if he did it, he won't have any son. Yitzchak would be dead. Never mind progeny, and so on. But what about his own feelings? What about his? One of the meanings of yirah is what we call in English feared for. There's no word in Hebrew. Yirah means feared. Respect has a package of meanings, but it also means feared for, a bitui. What does that mean in English? So here's an example. If he had sacrificed Yitzchak, so then he would fear for Yitzchak, because he died under the Korban, and he feared for himself, because he'd have to live with this thing that he did. So this is traumatic situation, this is high emotion. Where's the emotion in the text? Where's the feelings? It says, okay, you love your beloved son, okay. But where is the rest of the feeling dimension in the story? Yitzchak is relatively passive. He asks, where's the son, and so on. But basically, Yitzchak is just taking it on the chin and just going with the flow of events. And there's no emotion, there's no feelings in the story. Now, on my understanding of Chumash, the Chumash didn't want to write here a novel. I mean, if I were a novelist writing the story, well, this story that takes 3 pages, 10, 12 psukim, well, no novelist is going to say, he said, or he's going to give you some schmaltz. He's going to give you something to dig in, something that catches you, something that relates to you. Not just, he said, God said, or God told him this Eitzah, or whatever your point. In other words, Torah did not want to eliminate that. But it is eliminated and absent in the way the Chumash writes the narratives. And we, as the reader, must fill in that dimension. The actional dimension, the cognitive dimension, and the feeling dimension. In the system of Torah, there are three basic blocks of orientation. One from intellect, cognition, cognitive, one from feelings, and one from action. That, incidentally, is the whole Kabbalah system. It's built on that, where it's divided into three. The cognition part is Keter Chachma Bina, and then you have the emotional part is Chesed Dur Tiveret Nesed Ho Yidus 6, and then you have Malchut is the actional side. So this was developed, this schema of these three basic blocks of relative separability. Relative separability. Namely, when you're working on something in intellect, you are relatively separate from your feelings and from any kind of an action. If you're working in mathematics, which is the paradigm case, you're as far away from feeling and action as you can get. And so a mathematician who's thinking about something else, I modify that, is thinking about something else, and, well, he can't concentrate. And you know yourself. You wake up someday, you want to do something, and it involves writing or thinking through something. Something happened along the way, you can't concentrate. So that this is relatively speaking, because it turns out that each one of these three dimensions exists in a field of the other two. There is no cognition without feeling, there is no feeling without cognition, and there's no action without either, and so forth. So that inside the system there are dominances. That's why I call it relative separability. As you go and you have different problems, different types of things, you can have a dominance, like in math. You have to have a dominance on left brain function and so on, so on, so on, so on. I say in general, because as you start to study creativity in different domains, you see that what you say off the bat is no concentration, triggers off something, a train of thinking and a train of feeling in the person, and he goes to sleep with the problem, wakes up in the morning, got the solution. So that I modify that to account for the complexity of this relation. But in general, there are dominances which can be isolated, and there are these, each one is in a field, and to catch how they function is where we are in part of science today to understand the human life system. To understand the human life system, we're going to have to know how to combine, how these dimensions interface in the person, what kinds of development do they have, are they mechanistic, not mechanistic, do things emerge, whatever the story is, that's where we are. How, and that's the complication. And indeed, in medicine, well, it's supposed to operate on the body side of things, but we know very well that that field in certain contexts takes over, dominates, and the feeling dimension combines and makes the whole situation of diagnosis much, much more complicated. But it all comes from this basic beginning point. Okay, so an aspect of the story that eventually we have to come to understand, maybe not even tonight, some other time, but the basic point is to fill in the emotional dimensions of the story, of what was going on. So I say, Yitzchak, in not really reacting in any serious, overt way, at a certain point in the story, he realized that he's going to be the sacrifice. In the beginning, he wasn't. He asked his father, Avram, where are you? You're all doing things, but you're all getting ready to make a korban, a sacrifice. Well, where's all the stuff? I don't see the korban animal. Well, so Avram, Elohim will take care of that, whatever it is. Okay, that's good enough at the time, but eventually there's a certain point where he realizes he's tying him up on the Mizbeach. Well, where's all the emotion? Where's all the feeling? It's not there. So I say, in this particular case, the story wants to indicate that by Yitzchak being silent, basically speaking, and inactive, Avram learned something. He teaches Avram something that he didn't get from the story as it unfolds. So that's why we entitled the point about what can Avram learn from Yitzchak. It should be the other way around. But indeed, sometimes being silent in a context communicates. It communicates. And sometimes the person listening, and there's only silence, all of a sudden triggers off, the silence triggers off different aspects of the person, and out of it comes something that's going to be full of words. All of a sudden the person starts to emote and spell out all kinds of words and language. Okay, now we come to the basic story. I should preface this with the remark that the basic orientation that everybody takes has been the dominant opinion in all the Meforshim. The Ramban, for example, he says immediately, the first thing he says is that Avram was called upon to choose between doing what Elohim asked or not doing what Elohim asked. That was the choice. He had to go this way or go that way. And the choice was between doing something and not doing something. But there was somebody who wrote a Perush on the Chumash. His dates were 1279 to 1340. Yosef ibn Kaspi. That's the time now of the Ramban. Ramban, I think, is 1350, whatever the thing. But this is the Tkufa of Ramban and Rikanati and so on, the great Meforshim on the Chumash. And in his Perush, he says that the test that Avram had to face was not whether he would listen to Elohim or not listen to Elohim. The test, or the decision he had to make was whether he should listen to Elohim or listen to the Malach Hashem who came to him, as it says in the story. In other words, there were two dimensions to the story. So his test was, should he listen to Elohim and sacrifice his son? Or should he listen to the Malach Hashem? Well, if you read the text carefully, the Malach Hashem says that you shouldn't sacrifice him. So, okay, now you could understand the story. It's coming now from not one side or the other of Elohim. It's coming from Hashem in the form of the Malach versus Elohim. In Chumash, there are two types of Malachim. There's Malach, a messenger of Elohim, and there's Malach Hashem, a Malach from Hashem. Malach here means messenger, means like I called it logical implication. Like if you have a statement and you derive a statement, another statement from it, then the second one can be said to be the message that was given. And so the hint for this comes from Chazal, who say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can only send one message with one malach. What do you mean one malach? I want to send three. What do I have to send one at a time? In Purim story, the king says, look, I can't take back the edict and so on, and I have to do it this, I have to do it in steps. How can you do such a thing? You want to give three dimensions, give three dimensions. That's the end of the story. But what is Chazal saying in the hint? What they're telling you is that in logic, each derivation from one statement, this statement implies A, this statement implies B, the same statement can have many implications, but each one is conceptually different than the other. In logic, each statement is separate. So that's my interpretation of what Chazal meant, that Hashem can only send one malach. with one message and not more than one. Okay, so the first thing to know is, on this thing, before we get into the actual pshat, and this new understanding, is that I'm not coming out of zero. I'm coming, at least, somebody called my attention, after I had gotten it, somebody called my attention to Ibn Kaspi. I went to the library, same day, I looked up his Perush, and lo and behold, he didn't develop it the way I develop it, but his basic point is that the test was, did he listen to Elohim, or did he listen to the Malach Hashem? Okay, so Ibn Kaspi got the basic point, and unfortunately, or fortunately as the case may be, what has come down as the understanding package of the story is not Ibn Kaspi. Nobody heard of him, nobody, I mean, he's not part, Ramban, I mean, that's part of education. If you don't do the Ramban, Rashi, Ramban, these are the greats, the giants of Torah, Meforshim. So, okay, Ramban, who doesn't do that? Well, Ibn Kaspi, no, I never heard of him before that day when somebody told me, and sure, your library, and there's his book. But, so it's not, what's come down has been the Ramban interpretation. Now, where's the crucial point? Now you got to go to Hollywood. Now you got to put on Hollywood. Because what happens as the story goes, as the story develops, okay, Avram puts Yitzchak on, get ready, and now he wants to sacrifice him. So he lifts his hand, right? Now you need Hollywood. He lifts his hand, and it starts to come down black. And the next scene is Yitzchak and Avram are walking in the thicket, and he sees a lamb. In other words, it's taken for granted in the story that why the blackout? Just continue the story. Why the Hollywood? Because at the last moment, Avram changed his mind. And he listened to the Malach Hashem who said, don't sacrifice him. Not from the point of view that you passed the test. That's the usual view. You showed your intention. HaKadosh Baruch Hu only wanted a test. He didn't want you to sacrifice a child, your son. But he wanted to test you to see your level of obedience. Are you ready to do that? And of course, given that orientation, you could now interpret what's the emotion? Well, that's gonna get in the way. Building up 3 pages of emotion and feeling and sensitivity will take the reader away from the big point. The big point is the person has to be ready to sacrifice for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so the rest, now, you do that in minimum words without all the feelings because it's irrelevant. The reader over the centuries has asked, how could HaKadosh Baruch Hu do such a thing? How could he even make a test? Remember, it's a test. We know that it's a test. The reader. But Avram doesn't know it's a test. How could Elohim do such a thing? I mean, put him through the experiential dimension of this traumatic experience. There's something wrong. And you should know that over the years, centuries, not years, many, many people have turned away from Yahadut, from Judaism, not because of one story, goes without saying. That's not the way things work. But one intellectual ingredient in a person's leaving Yahadut is, can't make sense out of the story. And how could, if this is God, well, that's not for me. And over the centuries, that interpretation has remained. We take it from the positive, because on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and some of the high holidays, we have a special place for the Akedah story. We read the stuff from the Chumash, and we have a special place because in the interpretation of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, on the whole issue of tshuva, we want to stress the dependence and the rachmim that the person needs from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so, whether that's right or wrong is not the topic for tonight, but that's what has come down as part of the ideational field within which the story is embedded, and therefore it has a great place in Rosh Hashanah when we pray for life and health and so forth. So, again, to analyze, it's obvious that that whole business doesn't fit Ibn Kaspi. So, if one is interested to understand Chazal in the Gemara and how the Tefillah developed, this is a separate set of problems. It has nothing to do with the Chumash after we give the interpretation. We give the Ramban interpretation, now we go and see how it operates in different halachic problems and so on and so on and so on. All of those things are deserving their own analysis in the context of the time, who's saying it, what's going on, and so forth. So it's not in any way an automatic belittling of Chazal, but a setting up of proper questions that have to be answered by Chazal. My view is, if you will search in Chazal for the answers to reasonable questions that you come up with and don't seem to be on first glance in the story, you will not only find them in the story, you will find the answers and the questions in Chazal. That's the bias that I have, because for me, Yahadut, Judaism is built not exclusively on the Chumash, but on the Chumash as it was understood and incorporated into Torah Shebiktav, Torah Shebal Peh, and the whole package. And we even changed the name. We call it Torah. And so that's the whole orientation. Okay. So here we have, what was I saying? Okay, so we talked about the Ibn Kaspi point, and okay. Okay, so I was on this thing of the story. Why did I say Hollywood? Because the way the text writes, it says, here's the situation. He raised the knife. That was enough to show intention. So I'm making it more powerful by saying he started to come down. So the blackout comes 1 second after he starts to move down. So on the one hand, he showed his intention. He passed the test. On the other hand, he didn't go all the way down. But at the next moment, if we didn't have the blackout, he changed his mind. Because the text says, Ata, now, with an ayin. Now. Now what? Now, the Malach says, I know that you, Abraham, have Yirat Elokim. Not Yirat Hashem, Yirat Elokim. So it says Yorei Elokim Ata with an aleph, you, but it's prefaced by Ata, now. What now? What I'm suggesting is that stopping can indicate both stories. One, now after we saw your intention, I know you passed the test. Or, now that at the last minute you stopped, you got a shot from the heart which said to you, Avram, this is murder. Killing for your God is murder. If you have to give up your life for your God, that's something else. But killing is 100% murder. That thought at the last moment, and remember, you're dealing with a traumatic situation where you know from your own experience, you can't predict how you're going to act. Your mind gives you scenarios, but you can't predict how you're going to act when the person is here dying or whatever the situation is. Nobody has so much control that they could predict. You may cry, you may this, you may that. It's not in the domain of predictability, and it's a situation which says, what's so crazy? All of a sudden, bingo, you know the answer. You see what happened. He got an adrenaline shot from the Hashem part. Remember, two names, the Hashem part. And what does Hashem stand for? Hashem stands for Chaim. Because it comes from the story. If you eat from the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra, you'll be like Elohim. The Nietzsche says. And it's left for you, the reader, to say, oh, well, there's only one other tree. And if you eat from the Eitz HaChaim, you'll be like Hashem. In other words, that's the way the Chumash works. It gives you a piece of the story and says, if you're a careful reader, you should ask, well, wait a minute, isn't there something about Hashem in the story? There should be another animal that comes, the lion comes to him and says, if you eat from the Eitz HaChaim, you'll be like Hashem. Well, it doesn't say that. But it leaves for you to fill in the other part of the symmetry. So Hashem represents or exemplifies in Chaim. Well, you kill somebody as a korban on a sacrifice, that's not Chaim. That's the opposite. Okay, so here we have this business, atah, now, and it could go either way. And the way that I'm taking it is to indicate that it went to the point where Avram changed his mind, and he now had the property in the text as Yoreh Elokim. Why not Yoreh Hashem? Because the story wants to now get back to who told him to sacrifice him. Elokim told him to do the sacrifice. Elokim is the one who told him to do the sacrifice, and so listening to the Malach Hashem, in effect said, oh, the two-part name is Hashem Elokim. So in the first part of the story, Elokim was dominant. We talked about the dominance. Elokim was dominant. After the Malach Hashem came to him, Hashem was dominant. Now, it didn't say Hashem. It said Malach Hashem. Because the story didn't want to give you a confrontation between the two parts of the name, Elokim and Hashem. But it wanted to show you that one fine-tunes the other. You can have the cognitive dimension of knowing what to do and so on, right and wrong, making judgments, and it can be fine-tuned by the feelings which give it a chizuk, strengthen it, or weaken it. And so you have to see how the two pieces interrelate. So when there's feelings come into the scene, that's included in life, Chaim. So the two-part name have dominances. In the first part of the story, Elokim is dominant. In the second part of the story, Hashem is dominant. And he calls the name of the place, what does he say? Hashem, Makom Hashem, whatever it is. Shem Yereh. Well, okay, because what did he say? Well, this was fertility cult. This was the practice of the nations. You have to give up something dear and loved in order to get progeny, to get results and development for you, the God, and so forth. And so that was the norm. That was the in thing. Well, that in thing is carried by Elohim. And the Torah system comes along and says, wait a minute, that's not us. That's Elohim Acherim.
Right. That's why.
Now we have the answer to Elohim. The Hey Hayidiyah is the Elohim who was in the double part name, Hashem Elohim, as differentiated from Elohim Acherim. So based from this analysis and the Gan Eden story and the two-part name and the dominances that we talked about, we can give reasonable shot reasonable meaning to ha'elokim. When the text wants to emphasize the difference between the Torah system of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or Hashem Elokim, whatever, and Elohim Acherim, it uses the hey. And in the Perush, I worked out all 50 places, and in all 50 places, they all fit the same general pattern, that the text wants to go out of the way to stress, to emphasize the difference between Elohim Acherim, where it carries a plural,
Right.
and is not the name, not the two-part name, as differentiated from Elohim Shalano, which is the two-part name, where one side influences the other. Okay, so that accounts now, based on the understanding package, that accounts for the why it says Elokim Nisa. Okay, now inside the story, this is the basic thing. Inside the story, when I wrote it up, there's 11 pages. Inside the story is a discussion of the details in the story of why it says Avram, and it says the double name comes to him with a double name. It's only happened with Moshe Rabbeinu and with Yaakov and so on and so on and so on. Inside the story, inside the Perush, there's more development of each of the little pieces in terms of the language that contributes to the basic understanding of the story. But what I wanted to do tonight was just to give the different interpretation, and you've got the test. Now that you hear two sides, you have to see which is more plausible in relation to the psukim, the way it's structured, and so forth. Like when the angel talks to Avram, so the angel says, you didn't keep lo chasachta bincha mimeni. That's a very difficult word. It only appears 2 or 3 times in the Chumash. You didn't keep your son back from me. Okay, you in effect it's a negative, but from the positive it means you gave him to me to do what I want with him, to do something. Okay, so the point is that it's the Malach Hashem says, you kept him back from me. Well, it should have said mimeno, from Elokim. Elokim's the one who told him. So part of the analysis rests on the language. On this pshat that I'm giving, or that the Ibn Kasbi gives, it should have said mimeno. But when it says mimeni, we say, well, Hashem Elokim, the two-part name, could send any malach. He could send an Hashem malach or an Elokim malach. And so it's minor. It weakens your point. And there are things like that in the story which can take you in one direction of the traditional pshat, and there are things in the story that can take you in the other direction of the pshat that I'm giving. The basic point for this evening was just to give over the basic orientation of the story, which changes your understanding of the whole picture, and is built on principles that have not only are exemplified in this story, but are exemplified throughout the text. Whenever you, like I divided the stories into Hashem stories and Elokim stories, and asked the question that nobody asked on every single story. Every Meforish, every person who commented on the Chumash showed that there's a difference between Hashem and Elokim. So they used Chazal, Hashem is Rachmim, Chaim, and Elokim is Din. Whatever they did, everybody says, oh, be on the lookout. Well, to do the whole job for every piece was left for this century. Instead of, like when the Vilna says something, he gives you 3 words and he says, look, do your homework. You're interested in the Chumash? That's all. I'm only talking to people interested. I'm not interested to whet your appetite. So when I say, the Vilna says, when I say it says in the Dvarim, in the speech, Elokecha, in 150 places, the speech, second person, singular, right? And when it says Elokechem, So the Gaon says, Elokeichem means each individual in Klal Yisrael. If the pasuk wants to stress that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is always with, helps the soldier when he goes to fight, and it says Elokeichem, the plural form, that means each individual. When it says Elokecha, that means the nation as a whole. So the Am as a whole has a unity and can carry a singular. So when the Vilna Gaon says that in one word, he doesn't go and spend the time to do every one. There's 150 places. He says, you're reading the Chumash? You want to see what I said is true? Go to the text, take the stories, and when we get to Devarim in reading, read your Parsha, prepare, and you'll see what I say is correct. Okay, we are in a generation where we need spoon feeding. So I took the trouble to deal with every 150 places. But I did it in a different way. I showed how it relates to his rhetoric, to Moshe Rabbeinu's rhetoric. It's a great speech. It has rhetorical principles for persuasion and so on. And so I built it into a bigger context. But somebody would say, look, we'll do it. We'll do the homework. What are you wasting time writing a paper there, writing on every piece in the story? That when it says Elokecha, it means this. When it says Elokeichem, it means that. I gave you the rule. It's so simple. Once you hear it, well, what's the problem? You take up a sefer in shul and read it. When you come to the first one, you'll see right away. That's what it's talking about. But I say, in our generation, not only because we don't want to do the hard work, but on the other hand, there is something to be learned from actually doing each one. So that it's not just from the point of view of habit where we are. Nobody wants, like the publisher won't take a book more than 250, 275 pages. I mean, nobody's going to read it. They don't read it today. And I had a newspaper friend of mine who said they don't read the newspaper, they read the sports page. That's okay. So what I tried to do this evening was just to set forth a different interpretation of the story with the fundamental points. So to give you a test where you have to now choose. Once you hear it, you, as distinct from other people, have to make the choice which perush, which commentary here, better fits the material in the story, which includes the questions that you ask and the grammar and the language. I have found myself over the years on many things, but especially working on the Chumash. Also, I found it in learning in Gemara. Never leave your question, your stream of consciousness. If you read something, or you're reading something in Halacha, which is tight, and you're reading something in Chumash, which is less tight, a narrative story, and you capture the stream of consciousness that comes in, never give it up until you are shown by materials that you missed the point. In other words, you, the reader, the studier, the student, you are at the center of the text. And you are at the center of the halacha. If something comes into your mind and it doesn't fit what Rabbi Akiva said or Rabbi Yochanan, well, don't give it up right away. And in 9 out of 10 cases, you'll see, it'll come up in the Ramban. Somebody working over the sugya will bring it down, and you said, well, I threw it out. Never throw out especially the immediate, I call it stream of consciousness, but the things that bother you, or that make you, when you read the story, the feelings, the things that you think about. And if you will keep them in mind, back burner, of course. You're not going to give up everything and work on the Akedah story. But in back burner, this is part of your repertoire as the reader. And every time you read the story again, other dimensions will come forth and embellish the view. Such that, in effect, the book, and I wrote in one of the pieces, the book is dialogic. The book is dialogic. In other words, you, as the reader, are part of the content of the story. But with limitations. I mean, I like chicken soup. Good, that's a stream of consciousness. Well, you got to do a lot of talking to show that there's something in the story that reflects I like chicken soup. But there may be other things, like the questions I asked about the feeling dimension, how could Hashem do such a thing, and so on, that persist. They're not just by night, fly by night. The random, pure random, where has no relevance whatsoever. We don't keep. You're not going to do that. Because you could say to me, well, if you put yourself in the story, then what happened to the Chumash? We're trying to understand the Chumash. Well, that's partly true and partly false. We're trying to understand the relation of the Chumash to me, to the reader. The reader is at the center. And this I learned from one of the great Rebbeim, that where the Rambam and Ramban are past, and we have left is their Sforim. The live Rebbe, the live person who's learning the halacha, is at the center. When he passes away, then indeed history will judge who. Nobody's going to match the Rambam. Nobody's going to come and say, oh, I'm in the league of the Rambam. Come on. But when you're alive and the Rambam is just in a book, you are ahead of the Rambam. Because you could ask questions and get development and mechadesh and get chidushim. The Rambam can't get any more chidushim. It's whatever he did, the great work, is in books, and we have to have a tradition that milks it more, and indeed we have chidushim. So this is the way the thing works, in the sense that the individual reader is part and parcel of the text. And so therefore you have a beautiful package. I'm just embellishing the Ibn Kaspi point of the difference in the story. It's not listening to Elokim to do this or not to do it. It's listening to the Hashem dimension, which then gives you this whole orientation. But what happened to the hay?
Yeah, right.
In 55, 60 places in the Chumash, it says Ho Elohim. Now that usually is the case. It means the hay hayediyah. If you say Ha-Adam, you're talking about the man, or the person, or whatever. So the question that we have, and we'll come back to it at the end, is why does it say Ha Elohim and not Elohim? The translation again bypasses it, I think, because nobody had really a good shot at what it really means. Okay, but in 55 places it says Ha Elohim, and since I had to do all this differentiation between when it says Elohim, when it says Hashem, all of a sudden hit me, what am I going to say about it? And this was the point. Okay, so we will come back to that. Now, the basis of this talk, as for the rest of the Chumash, is also a point that most of the people do not take. The point is that there's a double name. There's a double name for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In the Torah system, as evidence in the Gan Eden story, there's a double name. In other words, like my name is Joseph David, okay? If Joseph represented one side of me and David represented another side, if you call me Joseph, I don't answer, it's not me. If you call me David, that's not me. You have to call me by both my names to catch the fullness of the person. Okay, now, the basic reason why that is a chiddush, nobody takes the view, very few, if any, is because Elohim is in a plural. So because it's grammatically a plural, people have said, oh well, like all the rest of the cultures, there's a general term for God, and then there's his name. Each culture had a God who ran the universe or whatever the properties were, but it had a name. So it was Baal, this, that, whatever the name was the personal name. So the personal name takes a singular. Elohim, well, if it's a plural, it should take a plural form, but it doesn't. It takes a singular. In the text, in the Bereshit story, it says, Bereshit bara Elohim. It takes a singular. So, this is not for tonight. The point is, for whatever the reasons, this will do that. Okay. But Nisa has another dimension to it. It means, just like I said, putting the person in doubt, wavering, not knowing which way to go, coming to a fork in the road, and it branches off into two directions, and the person who's doing the walking has to decide which way to go. Okay? So that's the first point. The first point is that Nisa, you have to look at it in this broader sense and not in a very narrow sense, like taking a test in a college, a classroom, or whatever. So it has to do with this wavering. Okay, second point, V'ha Elohim, Nisa et Avram. It doesn't say Elohim, it says V'ha Elohim.
Oh my God.
Now in the translations, here, there's a translation, God. Elohim is God. Okay. V'ha Elohim, Nisa et Avraham. And God gave Avraham a test. Tonight, I'm going to give you a test because I'm going to put in doubt the usual interpretation of the story. Which means that you're going to hear a different viewpoint, and now you're going to have two choices. Either you're going to accept one or accept the other. We talked about that before in different contexts, but by putting you in a doubt, that's the test. Now, so the first point here is Nisa. It means wavering. It means putting Abraham, when we say test, we usually look at it from the point of view of the teacher, from the point of view of Hashem. Hashem is giving a test. You know, a short answer. You have to answer yes or no. Do